Hey, welcome back to another edition of Locked In. Today, we're going to take a look at another one of Michigan's great players that will be coming back for the 2024 season. He is the third member of the Wolverines to be on ESPN's way too early All-America team. And when you watch this guy play, you're going to know why. I'm talking about number 2 cornerback, Will Johnson. And he is a big-bodied cornerback who plays like a bully. He can make people go where he wants them to go. Uh, Very few limitations that he's got, but he has one weakness we'll point out as we go along through the film. But what you're going to see for the most part is Will Johnson knows how to put his body in the proper position to make great plays, and he knows how to make wide receivers go where he wants them to go. And then finally, dude breaks on the ball. He breaks on the ball as good as anybody that you will ever see do it. We're excited to watch him. We're excited to cover him, and he should have a huge year next year. Chance, what do you say about it?
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed it up there. Will Johnson is very good in man coverage, as we all know. Michigan loves to run their man. He's also very effective in zone whenever they run it. He doesn't really get fooled by anything. You'll see that later on when Penix does a pump fake, and Will just kind of just does what he's supposed to. Kind of just doesn't even
Yeah.
care about what Penix is back there doing. He's going to play to the system and to his position that he is trained to do, and that he knows is going to put him in the right position to make a play on the ball and succeed within the bounds of the field. And one thing I'd like to say about him is when he's over top of somebody looking down on them and the quarterback, he's probably the best defensive back in the nation. And you're not really going to catch a ball on him, and if you do, it's pretty rare. Now, his break is very fast and very hard, and he'll come downhill on his break, and he gets his hands in the right position to break up a pass with the ball and the receiver's hands. Now, one thing that happens is when he gets his back turned and he flips his hips, usually on more vertical routes, and he gets out of position, usually only by great players, then he tends to not do as well just because he can't see anything. And when you're a corner having to play with your head turned, with your flips hip running down the field, you're mainly watching the receiver. And when the receiver brings his hands up, that's when you're going to make a break on the ball to swat the ball away from his hands. Well, if you get a great receiver that can wait and see the ball in and bring his hands up at the last second, catch the ball and bring it in, and then DB such as Will Johnson is bringing his hands, then it's too late. So, I mean, the only way to really affect Will Johnson is to have a great, if not generational, top talent at receiver. I know Marvin Harrison did made a few good plays on him this year. Now, I will say though, it only really happened in the first quarter. Like after the first quarter, Ohio State did not want to pass the ball around Will Johnson. So I mean, he really does affect the game, and especially that Ohio State game, which matters to Michigan and Ohio State both so much, especially with the history there and what it means to get into the playoffs and the conference championship. So with that all being said, so we've talked about it. Now let's see it in action.
So what we got here is Will Johnson is lined up at the top of the screen at the 25-yard line over top of Harrison. And let's just let this thing play through.
Yeah. This is what I was talking about earlier. His break on the ball. Ohio State loves to run their slants. Will Johnson knew it. He gets in front, gets hands on, man's on, and makes an absolute play on the ball to start off this game against Ohio State and really set the tone and get them up early after he gets this pick for them to score, within the goal line.
I mean, he absolutely jumped that route. I mean, even he knew what was happening before it ever happened. And that's the thing you want to see, at least in my opinion, in a cornerback. That takes guts. I mean, that truly takes guts for him to jump that slant. But no doubt, I mean, it's a tendency you see in a lot of people very often because as you see down here, you've got Ohio State in trips set to the field, and you got your one-on-one that they want up top. It's pretty early in the game, halfway through the first quarter. You have to try your shot. They know Will Johnson's good. They know Marvin Harrison Jr. is good. So they've got to take their shot. And how you do that a lot of times is you're going to set trips away, get that good receiver that you want to target to the top. Sometimes you see teams run comebacks. Sometimes you see teams run slants. But what they're going to do is they're probably going to put him on the route that they're most confident in, that they can make not necessarily a splash play, but they want to complete a good pass play, against your good defensive back in a one-on-one. So you got a little bit of a, I guess you could say you got a little bit of a head game going on right here, that they want to test your man with their man. And right here, I mean, if you watch how this works, he he sees what's happening and just
Yeah,
jumps in front of him.
I'll say,
I mean,
and
that
a lot
that
of
that
that
takes
goes
up
to
30.
so a lot of that goes to his positioning, as you talked about earlier.
It
Say
does.
from the start of the play, you see his helmet right here. Just leave it right there. You see his helmet absolutely dialed in on the quarterback, so you know he's watching quarterback from the start of the play. And if you look at the way his hips are with his body position, he's turned inwards. So um, you'd be thinking, hey, this is probably more of a zone look, especially if you're Kyle McCord trying to get a read on it. You have two high
Mhm.
safeties, and you're saying, hey, if it's man and they're this close on the boundary side, not the field side, when you see Will Johnson lined up on Marvin Harrison, if it's a man, you're going to see him actually turn his body outside, because it's easier to guard somebody when you only have to worry about a 5 yard space all the way up the field instead of the entire rest of the field. And with this, you'll see his body turn inside, meaning that he knows he has help on the inside. And, he absolutely just makes a break on this ball when he looks at the Kyle McCord and sees that he's going to throw it.
And one thing too that I think that one of the nuances that you got to think about whenever you're, whether you're defending it or whether you're calling it on offense, um, by this point in the season, I mean, Will Johnson had 3 interceptions as a freshman, 4 as a sophomore. I mean, everybody knows. I mean, this guy's something else. But look at this. Harrison is on the bottom of the numbers. Johnson is on the top of the numbers. You better have some confidence that you're going to complete a slant right here, because that's really bad position. If you have inside leverage as a cornerback on a receiver running a slant, you've got a good shot to jump the ball. And that's honestly what happens here, because it seems like Harrison's just a little bit more outside, and he's able to read that. He's able to read the receiver's break. He's able to receive, or either you can take it one of 2 ways. You read the receiver's break, or you read the quarterback's eyes. And if you stare down that slant and you already, know that there's a high tendency that they're going to try one-on-one right here, and this is a slant route, which it turns out to be a slant route, which it is. He steps in there, gets even with Harrison, and he's got himself a really, I mean, a nice pick, but at the same time, a pretty easy pick that's really set up well by position. And so let's go through that one more time before we move on. He moves a little more even with him, gives him the outside. Boy, that's just a good play.
Yeah, it really is something, just and like you talked about earlier, just that positioning. Said positioning wins him battles. And I think here is where he gets kind of messed up.
Yeah, this is not long after the previous play, probably the next drive, to tell you the truth. And
And
so what we have right here is, if correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, they're obviously in ace or double twins, 2 receivers to each side. Down here at the boundary, you got a little bit of a gap between them. So instead of going trips this time, to the field, they set, the twins. And what you'll often see right there, especially, obviously, I say obviously, that might not be the word to use. You may not know. If you got this corner pressed up right here, and you got, your nickel lined up here on the hash, there's a really good chance those are going to be they're going to be manned up. So what you can expect to see is what happens here. Ohio State comes out with a switch route. And so the idea of the switch route is to make these guys, if they're true man, they're going to follow these guys. And that's what you see right there, is that Johnson takes, this is Harrison again, right? Uh,
yeah,
to the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
And so and the cornerback follows because typically what your switches are going to be is it's going to be kind of either a slant or a post and kind of an outbreak and almost wheel type route to get the inside guy usually on the top of the numbers so he can fade to the sideline, and that's what happens here. And let's see, hopefully I didn't. Yeah, I wrote a little bit too far, but talk about what you see here with his eyes and how he turns because that was a point you made earlier.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's a little flat-footed at the start, but I think that is what hurts him a little bit right here. You'll just see him kind of stand flat-footed, take a few jab steps into the ground just to get his feet moving, start chopping them, and then as soon as Marv kind of gets on him, I mean, this guy can run with anybody in the nation. So I mean, as soon as Marv gets on him, he turns, flips his hips to run with him, and you just see his head turn, and I think it'll show him pull his hands up after if you keep going, but you'll just see Marvin just turn around and bring his hands at the right moment, catch that ball as soon as he brings his hands up, and Will Johnson just doesn't have enough time to counteract with his hands to break it up.
And that's the thing I think right here that is really good because, like what you say, you can tell Harrison's head is turned to track that ball. But we mentioned this a lot when we talked about the Washington receivers. Is one of the tendencies that you see, especially, I mean, now I think more than maybe I've noticed it in the past. They are, like you say, they're very good at keeping their hands at their hips, and not giving that defensive back a chance to get his hands in between. And that it's tough. And I mean, you can, I mean, I know I get, we can say, hey, this is a spot that he could improve on, but at the same time, I mean, this is also a great wide receiver doing what great wide receivers do. And so one of the things that we said there at the beginning is Chance made a comment before we started recording that it takes a great wide receiver to beat him, or he like that a great wide receiver can beat him, and I respond by saying, but it takes a great one to beat him, and there aren't that many of them, and and the thing of it is I mean coming back this year he's got a lot of time to work, and no doubt they're looking at these same plays, and a guy like Johnson doesn't have a whole lot of I guess a whole lot of areas of concern, but this is one that I bet you he is working on this year, and I have no doubt he's going to fix it. So let's keep on rolling through this.
Yeah, I was say, you should be able to see another view from it. Yeah, right past it. Well, you'll start out by seeing he's kind of turned inside, wanting Marv to go inside, and then that kind of hurts him a little bit because he breaks out really fast on that ball, and Will just kind of chops and has to break out and flip his hips. But he just kind of gets a little. He doesn't really get that much separation, just a little bit, and just gets turned around and catches that ball before Will ever brings his hands on it.
And one of the things that we've talked a lot about in watching film of these really just high school quarterback recruits, like your what's his name, George
George
McIntyre,
McIntyre.
and then Julian saying, we were watching the other night that we've talked so much about how good they are when they are in a high pressure situation in close contact to escape on a just absolute just zero plane, just straight down the a white line. And I think you see this too with what Harrison does, because I mean, I think how he breaks out of this route was probably unexpected. Because I think that Johnson probably thought he's going to drive him inside and be able to ride on his his hip as he goes up the field. But Harrison makes a good move here, and I mean, so this is that's something worth pointing out right here. He just drifts outside just a little bit more than I think Johnson may have expected him to. And like you said, I mean, that creates some separation that makes this possible. I wonder too with something like that, because I know one thing I used to like to do with wide receivers is defensive backs. I mean, they are. I mean, I don't think that I mean, coaches and players, I think about that a lot, but sometimes I don't think that people really um, realize what a reactionary position they're in. I mean, they have to be instinctual as all get out. Yeah, tendencies and you know what people are going to do. You have an idea of what the man on the other side of you is going to try. But little things I think can get you off. And I used to like to have receivers take an extra step when they could on like say just like a hitch route. And that one extra step would it throws a cornerback off because he expects you to catch that ball in a certain place. And so I wonder right here if he didn't get put off of his mark just a little bit, because that's a good little bit. If you look at the room between them, that's a good little bit of space that was created, just by this, outside drift. And Harrison got he got his body upfield quick, and Johnson was in a bad spot. So I mean, I wonder if you might not see him, make a better play on that one ultimately.
Yeah, to take away from it though, his recovery is great. I mean,
He's
there's not
good.
much separation at all at the end of the play. He just brings his hands too late.
Boy, watch
And
this.
and the next play though, you watch him play over top and he just has better positioning. He stays over top and he keeps his eyes on the quarterback for the first, you know, 20 yards of this play,
Yeah, I was back up to see that.
and that really helps. And,
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about when he lines up over top and he stays over top, he is hands down. I mean, it's hard to catch a ball on him when he has his head turned toward the quarterback and can see what's going on. And what's even better about this is he uses the sideline to his advantage. And
yeah.
you'll see on these vertical routes, he knows that there isn't, much help inside. I think they're running cover one again, as we saw in the last play. And, he tries to run them to the outside this time. And the last play, he was trying to run them to the inside. But you'll just see him backpedal, and then as soon as Marv, finally gets on him, he flips his hips about 20 yards down the field. So I mean, there's a big difference in that, and he kind of just stays over
Mhm.
top, pushing them to the outside of the field and kind of down, and then you'll see Kyle McCord overthrow him by 6, 7 yards just because Will Johnson was in his way for that vertical route, and he's on the sideline now. So I mean, there's no way that ball is being caught. Even if it's a good ball, that's not being called.
Yeah. And I think with this one too, if you go back, you learn something, I believe, about the philosophy that Ohio State has of trying to call their plays here. Um, you've got him in a position. I mean, he's caught a ball. He's beat him. On that one. And why not go back? Why not try it again? And if you look at the structure of their offense, they come out, that it looks like that they've got tight end. That guy might have been coming from like a wing position. I don't know right here just from this image, but definitely, he is coming out. There's a linebacker up there to take him on. So we don't have to worry about him if you're Will Johnson like that you can just focus completely, on the deep stuff. Got twins at the top. So once again, you've really got a shot set up right here, kind of like how they had their slant set up earlier. Is like you got a one-on-one that you're going to try to work. You just beat him, so why not try it again? That's not a bad idea. And so the thing that I would say, and I mean this is not like my term, it's but it is really a good idea, because if you see where that he is at, he's positioned just there's green grass between his feet and the number. Harrison here is on the number. And so what you can always expect, like with this, whenever that receiver goes up the top of the number, he's going to run a fade. And so what's going to happen is that he's going to come up, and at a certain point, he's going to use this space to break over to the sideline and give the quarterback room to throw the ball that's going to drop in. And what I was going to say, that's not my terms. There's a guy who, I mean, he's got a really good coaching channel who coaches down here in Georgia, Chip Siegel, and he always calls this he always calls that the yellow brick road, I think's what he calls it. And he's like, that's where that receiver wants to be, and he's going to fade to the sideline to give the quarterback a chance to work the ball in. It's a brilliant idea until you come up against a cornerback who knows how to knock you off that spot. And now the deal with it is a lot of cornerbacks. I mean, a good receiver like Harrison, you probably could bully him. And that's one of the things that we haven't mentioned is, I mean, Johnson's 6'2". He's a little over 200 pounds. He's not your average size quarterback. I mean, or cornerback. He's got the body to put you where he wants you to go. And I think that that's really what happens right here. You're not going to run through this dude. I mean, you're just not. You're not going to run by him. You're not going to run through him, and he's going to dictate the terms of engagement right here. So he had already turned to fade before Harrison fades, and so that's one of those things that I think you can say a lot of it is a testament to the Michigan system. And I know that there are a lot of people, outside of Michigan. I saw it down here in the South, everybody's like, this is never going to happen again. Coordinator's gone, whatever. that's more than a coordinator. I mean, that's a guy who understands how the game's played. Probably a guy who played some receiver, in high school. He understands how you're going to work on that fade route. And so, I mean, it's one of those things that, he outfades the fade and he's there over top of him because he turns his hips well. He gets down deep on that number. Harrison's having to look for the ball. He really doesn't know where Johnson's at this moment. I'm sure he can feel him, but he doesn't really know precisely where he's at, and he has to be ready for the ball to fall. So just like he beat Johnson, with the late hand raise on that previous play we showed, Johnson beats him right here whenever he starts to look for the ball. He flips over and gets on top of that fade route and really just screws Harrison's life up right here, on this play.
I was say, what's Harrison going to do? Run straight into
What do
him?
you do? I'll tell you what you do. Offensive pass interference. It's the only option that he leaves him right there. And
And
Harrison knows it.
so he
I mean,
kind of
he's
just
just
he
like,
kind of just stops. He kind of
yep,
just
next play.
stops.
Yeah, I mean, he knows he's beat right there. I mean, that's a brilliant play. And so, like, next play, all I can do is run through your body. And if he tries to run through him, I mean, he's going to have to knock him down. They're going to throw a flag, and you're going to be, you're going to be in a bad position. It's going to be, it's going to be backed up a little bit. So I mean, good for Johnson. I mean, that's just the way smart defenders know how to take stuff away from you. They always the phrase that coaches will use is we want to make them left-handed. Well, right there, you saw him make Marvin Harrison Jr., an outstanding wide receiver, as left-handed as he could be on that play.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly going to be it for our Ohio State film.
So we move
We'll
on to
look at
Alabama, bottom of the
we'll look at
screen.
Alabama, and you see kind of the same thing. He doesn't get faked at all by this little comeback route into a vert, and he presses him outside into that sideline, and there's no way this dude ever catches this ball. It don't matter where this ball is thrown. Like there is no way. He's
No,
already out of bounds, like at the end of the play. So I
oh
mean,
yeah, there's no hope whatsoever.
it's like his body pressure just pressures them so far down outside, and like underneath when he's over top looking back. Because I mean, you look again, he's got his head on. Even when he's turning, he has his head looking towards the quarterback. So I mean, it's really impressive that you're 15, 20 yards down the field and you have your head to the quarterback, and there's no way that Alabama receiver is beating you at that moment. And then you can flip your hips and get over top on that ball. And
Yeah.
just his presence just absolutely messes with any receiver on the field to get out of position.
And right here, and it's unfortunate. I mean, I wish we didn't have that bar at the bottom. But the thing of it is that I think there's and this goes back, like I was talking something about Ohio State's offensive philosophy, or what I take it to be. This is something I've said multiple times that really stands out to me about Michigan, is that on these deep passes, like a lot of times the way you get beat is you drop to a certain point. And if anybody's ever coached defensive backs in high school, it's maddening that they will drop until they think it's okay to stop. And the problem is the receiver is not going to stop. And so those Michigan defenders, you see them a lot of times, especially, in that second level linebackers. I mean, they got their eyes on the quarterback and they're dropping, and it compresses space. Well, Johnson does something right here that's kind of like, I would call like a compression action. Um, he he pauses to make sure that he's not beat on this route. But watch what he does next. Most guys are just going to take on and say, "Oh crap, we got to run." Well, watch what he does. Like, he backs at an angle into the sideline because he knows the most important thing for me to do is to stay over top of him. Yeah, I have to honor, that little turn back. I have to honor it because he might throw it. But when I get out of it, I'm not taking off running vertical with him down the field. I'm going to back up at an angle and compress him to the sideline, and just basically, I guess, just, simple geometry, if that's what we want to call it. He's going to squeeze the life out of this dude. I mean, he's like a boa constrictor on the sideline. I mean, watch what he does right there. I mean, because he honors his fake right there. He's like, okay, something might happen, but look at him. Bounces him on, and then when he gets him on over there and turns, he can start driving him out to the sideline. And what happens to that receiver is he's not wanting to contact him, so he's going to drift more to the sideline, and he's not thinking about that. The receiver's wanting to get open. I guarantee you, his instinct is to run down as far as he can, fast as he can, and he's not thinking about the fact that Johnson's positioning has caused him to drift to the sideline progressively. And by the time he's down where that Milroe can make a pass, I mean, there's no sense in throwing the ball. It's a different version of the same thing we saw against Marvin Harrison on that last play. So what do we got here?
Um, Here, I don't really remember what we
Trips look
have here. I know he's still on the bottom of the screen here. Um, Said I know it's not a
heavy inside
completion.
leverage on that.
Yeah, he has heavy inside
Right.
leverage here. So I mean, he's trying to force him to the outside again. Oh, it's that comeback. Yeah. So I mean, you just saw him run that vertical route and him, come down on that comeback fake. And I mean, right here, he's still over top. He flips his hips, but he's so preemptive to strike on that comeback. So I mean, you really can't do anything with this guy when he has his head turned, because I mean, he has his head turned back towards the quarterback and receiver the entire time, so that it's never just turned back towards the other side of the goal line.
Right.
So I mean,
And and I've said this before, and I mean, and I know, I mean, I guess the my hillbilly accent throws it off, but I mean, I know something about the academic world. I mean, I was there a long time. And what I can tell you about a guy like this is, and this is something I like so much about Michigan, these are smart dudes. I mean, these are not just, these are not just, oh, they're just, better athletes than everybody. Yeah, I mean, they are. But this does not come through just sheer physical talent. He knows what you're doing. I mean, this is some kind of study. And this is not, coaches, being masters of a game plan. This is a dude who has watched his man and he knows what he's going to do. Because when he turns right there for this, the angle that his hips take, I mean, this is my read on it. And I mean, I'm going along with really with what you're saying here about that comeback. He turns his hips, and where his hips perfectly turn to the path of a comeback.
I
And
would say he's
I'll let
watching
you
that
know,
dude's feet.
that's exactly it. He knows exactly what he's going to do. He gets his hips to match his hips, and I mean this route's screwed. Anybody else, I don't care who it is, anybody else, they will be, instead of being on the N of Prudential, they will be almost on the T of Prudential, and that makes a difference because that little comeback, that thing's wide open. If you give him one more step, heck, even if your hips aren't turned the way that Johnson's are turned right here, I promise you, he is going to peg him right on the sideline. It doesn't make a difference who it is. That route's completed, but Johnson screws it up because of positioning. He screws it up because he knows what is going on, and and you can see this too. I mean, you just watch the demeanor of the wide receiver right here. He just,
Yeah, he
are
kind
you
of just
kidding me?
gives up.
He gives up. I mean, you look at that. I mean, he totally gives up. I mean, if he could have given up any harder, he would have just thrown his hands up, kind of almost like what Harrison did on that route.
I
Right,
mean, you
right
could
there.
say it's because the ball
He
was
walks
already
out of it.
passed, but it's like that dude had no chance whether the ball
No.
was passed or not.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way you guard that route, man. So let's move on to this national championship game. This is something they needed.
Yeah, I would say you'll see the running back motion out to run a wheel, and you'll see Penix right there. He did a fake, and you see Will at the top of your screen to the left here, just unfazed, and he knows he has help over top, so he
Mhm.
doesn't have to absolutely turn and burn because they're in a zone coverage now, not a man in this one play, and he has his eyes keyed in on that quarterback the whole time and just tracks the ball, high points it. He ends up catching it, and I know it looks like it might be incomplete, but it was a catch for an interception.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, did this not take? And I mean, and some of y'all, who've got better memories than me, can say if I'm right or wrong. Was this not on Washington's opening possession of the second half? I mean, I think it is. I mean, somebody check me if I'm wrong. I want to think it was early third quarter. And this was a big deal because I mean, Washington seemed to be getting some things figured out. And it's and I don't remember it. I mean, maybe I should have looked at this again to be able to tell you the accurate narrative of it. But something like this is huge, man. I mean, because I'm one of those, I'm a firm believer. I want to score to end the half, and I want to score to begin the second half. And I feel like if I can do that, just I mean, really, I think almost at any level of football, if I can wrap the half with touchdowns, I'm probably going to beat you because if I can get a 14-point lead on you, and I can't beat you, you're either really good or I've really screwed everything up. And so this, I mean, you're taking a really important possession away. They've got their plan settled on what it is they want to do coming out, and you play great defense because, like you said, I mean, with this, the way he sits, if I can get this back there, here's the thing that I would point out. So we see him right there sitting in his spot, and I 100% guarantee you the vast majority of cornerbacks will not do what he does. They will not do what he does. That's why we run wheel routes. They do not expect him to sit in his position. And that's the thing that I think is just absolutely wild about what he can do. And we're not talking about, like one of these, grizzled 6-year graduate guys. We're talking about a sophomore sitting here, a young guy who's, I mean, just unbelievable. Dead stops, sets in his place because he knows, like you said, that safety's getting over top of him. And that's what you have to have in the defensive backfield. If these guys believe wholeheartedly that that man behind me has got his spot, just like I've got my spot, he's going to sit on that spot and you are going to be an absolute sucker and throw it right to him. And that's exactly what happens right here. I mean, you can't play. Look at him. Look at him. There he goes. He knows he's behind him. But he also knows this guy right here is up in front of him, and he is not going to be suckered. You ain't going to high-low him.
I
And
say
so
you
we,
see him give one step on that break and then immediately just go back.
yeah. And what really ends up happening here, I mean, with a fantastic quarterback in Penix, is Johnson's positioning, like his discipline, his ability to sit, just basically just to sit in his spot and just wait for it to happen the way it's supposed to. I think it screws this whole thing up. Maybe I
Yeah.
can get this thing rolling again. There we go. Because I mean, obviously you might want to throw that to the receiver sitting, who sat down there on the 30. But if you do, that defender's just going to absolutely jack him. I mean, and might, break it up. Might even, who knows, could pick it. And so he's like, okay, that's not there. He's going through his progression. All the world's caving in on him in the pocket. So it's like, I got to get that ball out there. He knows he's got the wheel. Typically, that wheel's going to be a good option. I guarantee you that as soon as he threw it, I mean, I promise you, he had a complete oh crap moment because he was not expecting Johnson to be sitting there in that spot
Yeah,
because that's
especially
not what the
because
average
you
defensive
you
back will do.
see, I say he absolutely had to see Will Johnson take a step down
Mhm.
on that little pump fake he threw out. Said because I mean I could see it, you know he can see it. So I mean you see him
Sure.
go forward, and as soon as he saw that, he automatically clutched up and threw it back.
Right there. Yep, that's exactly, you're right. Yeah, that's
Because I
exactly it
mean
because he
you
was
see,
thinking he's going to get smacked.
he's like, oh, he's out of position. There's no way he makes it back. So he throws it, and he absolutely does make it back.
And then, I mean, and look at that safety right there. If he bites down on that, man, I mean, that's 16 yards right there on the spot, and he's probably going to get another few, might even break a run, honestly, because I
I
mean
said
that's
that's a
safety.
one on
He's
one.
going to close ground. I mean, he is, and somebody might say that. Yeah, he's going to close ground, but there's an opportunity there to make a play.
That no matter what, that's a one on one. I know we've talked about how Michigan is secure tacklers and everything, but at the end of the day, one on one, who knows?
It's what you want. If you're an offensive coordinator, you want one-on-one shots. Let my guy beat your guy, and that's exactly what I think Penix thought that he had right there. It's perfect setup. Left-handed quarterback deliver right there on the spot. It's a good one, but boy, I tell you, Johnson, he makes a fine play right here.
Yeah. So
And
like we talked about before, it's just his positioning, his ability to be in position. We'll get into the Penn State game. I know this was a big game, even though it might not seem that big. And you see again Will Johnson just keeping his head on the quarterback, and breaking down on routes underneath of him. This dude can do that all day. So nothing will ever affect him underneath like that. Now, we did talk about him getting beat when his head's turned. This one play is one where he does not, and he gets his head turned back at the last second to track that ball and gets his hand on the bottom to poke that ball out while also pushing number 3 out of the sideline. So, I mean, even if this guy catches the ball, it's not a catch because Will Johnson has pushed him so far out that his foot is on the white line and that's out of bounds. So, I mean, no matter what, his positioning sets himself up so well that, the wide receiver, even if he catches the ball and his hand doesn't break through on the bottom to get that ball out, it's not a catch or a touchdown.
I'll tell you, I mean, he plays this just like right here. Once again, he knows where he's at. He knows what they're going to do. You got your one-on-one set up down here at the bottom. And I mean, typically what you see a lot, as an offense, they're going to be in man-to-man. So you usually see with something like this guy's brought in next to you almost to the hash mark. It's going to be a fade. They're going to try to hit that. Or, I mean, some people would say it's a corner, some will call it a fade, whatever you want to. But anyway, you want to get that outside receiver toward the back pylon. Johnson knows that. And so he goes ahead and just opens up that way. When he opens up, I think that it probably makes that receiver have to widen just a little bit because you can't just run through him because he's going to be right on your hip. So when he opens up, Johnson knows, okay, this is a foregone, it's a foregone conclusion. They're going to try to drop the ball in the corner. I'm going with you, getting hands on. And like you said, he pushes him. And see, that's the thing that I mean, and I know, I mean, I'm like, 280-pound dude, I'm offensive line's all that I was ever, able to play athletically. And so I can't really tell you a lot about what, I'd say, oh, I would do this, but I mean, it's like the fat man armchair, defensive back. But what I always think, and I'm thinking this as a lineman, so used to, getting your hands, why in the world do you not just bench press these dudes when they sacrifice their body, when they leave the ground? If you're on them, shove them. And this shows some kind of presence of mind. And you can already see, his elbows. He is loaded up. He's not going to bump him. He's fixing to throw number 3. And like you said, I mean, if you look right where his foot's at, hits right on the white line. I mean, it's an excellent play. And how he knocks that ball out, I mean, he doesn't just rip it out. But that little poke, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
just
like
right
it doesn't
down.
look like anything. Watch it right there. That does not look like a big deal, but man, it breaks up a touchdown. And he's also able to keep his posture back with that one. He has his left arm back and he pokes with his right. He doesn't, it's just a gentle poke. You don't even see his arm move hardly. And he's got the other one back saying, I am not interfering with this guy. So he shows you intelligence at the line to get over top of this route that he knows is coming. He shows you really violent aggression to say, I'm going to push you so hard that you will go out of bounds. And when we recover from that push, I'm going to keep closing on you, but I'm going to play so gentle that nothing can be said about me interfering with you. That is I mean, just wickedly high intelligence in the moment. And I mean, that's like, and we keep going back. I mean, this is a smart dude. And that's what those Michigan boys are. I mean, they're smart and they play well. So we got another Penn State. We got him down here, on an island against somebody. And you see this a lot of times. I mean, there's a lot you can do with those stacked wide receivers, outside of the numbers right there. Makes that boundary pass seem like it's going to be a lot more viable of an option. And so once again, you have to be if you're that opposite side cornerback, it looks like all of the fancy stuff is at the top of the screen. And when you see that, you better think, by God, they're going to throw to this side. They're looking for their one-on-one.
Yeah, I was say
And
you see this linebacker hovering inside and this safety hovering, you know it's going to be an outbreaking route. And just by looking at his defense's position, he can tell, hey, you know, they're probably going to throw it here because they run a slant, they're riding his linebacker. They run a post, they're riding his safety.
Mhm.
I mean, even if they run a vertical, that safety's coming over. Any dig that linebacker's there, that safety's coming down. So I mean, anything over here, it's out of the question. So you already know that dude has to go outside where it's he has a better chance to win. And
And you could,
you also see his leverage trying to keep him
yes,
inside.
that's precisely it.
So, but he
And
looks
and
this
I think
all the way in.
And so, I mean, I think that he, like you said, his leverage screws this route up because one of the things that happens a lot too that I don't think that we've mentioned, and I mean, and you can't say that it's, you can never know this. It's one of those, I guess it's one of those things you can never know. But so many times when you get a single side receiver, uh, everything's an option. And and they have, he's going to be on a choice. And so, like you said, slant's not there, the drag's not a good idea, the post is not a good idea because of the deep safety. Likewise, the same, if the post is not a good idea, then like the corner and the post corner, it's not a good idea either. Everything just stinks. You can't just run a straight go route, or fade because Johnson's standing right over top of you, and you know who he is and what he can do. And so really, I mean, it's down to the point to where, you say, okay, we're throwing the ball, we need yards. Uh, One of the safest things that you can do is throw that out. And it's probably gonna get you 5, 6, 7 yards, depending on how deep you run it. But there's no hope. And and the thing that I think is so good with this one is he runs a good route, but the ball's there. I think in any other circumstance, this is probably a completed pass. But what I like here is like he reaches in there and he gets that ball out. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that he is just in the right position. I mean, he knows how to, like, right there. He gets over top of that. He knows what's happening, and he's trailing just right at the right spot. That if he keeps on that line, he is going to come right off of his upfield hip, and he's going to have an opportunity to make a play on this ball. Now he's going to probably have a chance to catch it, but what you're hoping, I think, is that on this out, is that if he does make the play, you would still like to be able to reach in there and smack it. And I mean, to me, that's exactly, yep, that's what it looks like, because so many times what'll happen on those outs, and if you've ever had the experience of trying to either throw, catch, or coach that route, it's hard, and some people just can't. And what happens, like right here, you can already see that football. If you draw a line, that's exactly what I wanted. If you draw that line, that ball is already behind him. The receiver knows it, and he's going to have to adjust inside. He does a good job of getting back in there. And so, ball's behind him. He has to turn back. Johnson's in the right position. Look at him right there. His eyes are already on the ball. He is not going to concern himself right here with the tackle, because that guy has got to pull the ball back inside. He's going to lay his hit, and he's going to do it in such a way that he can just basketball style strip that thing out, because the ball carrier's got to turn it around to the front to get it to his outside arm, because that's what he's trained to do. I mean, this is it's brilliant. It's all that it is. It's all you can say. And virtually everything that you see Will Johnson do, it is brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a good reason why he's on that way too early All America team. He's going to be on the way too late All America team, and he's probably going to be on the first round of the draft picks come next. I guess the 2025 draft.
Yeah. And I mean,
Maybe he stays, but boy, I tell you, this guy looks about ready right now. So, um,
so
yeah, it
then
should be a fun junior year.
he started off, 10 yards lined off of him. He takes
He
two
did.
steps back. So I mean, he's like 10 yards away from all play, and he's still able to make a break on that ball. His closing speed is something that is really just unheard of. It's unprecedented. And even if that ball is thrown outside, he probably even has a better chance to make a play on that ball if it's thrown outside than rather it being thrown inside, which is something that is crazy because, say the ball is a perfect ball in the perfect spot for his receiver, it's a better ball for Will Johnson to make a play on. So, I mean, just the way he's fundamentally just so sound, it's something you don't see a lot, especially with a true sophomore.
I agree. I mean, it's a rare talent that he's got. He is truly something else, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch again. This year at Michigan, I expect huge things out of him. Um, I think the sky's the limit for him, because I mean there seems to be virtually no ceiling on him. So he's going to have a fine career. That's all you can
Yeah.
say. Fine career. Anything else to be said about Will Johnson? On
Nah, I
this.
look forward to watching him play. I hope all you Michigan fans stuck around to the end. Really enjoy
Hey,
interacting with y'all. Hope y'all enjoy it. We will have more Michigan content coming soon, at least once a week, to keep y'all having some content to watch. But really appreciate everything y'all are doing for us. Um, with that being
and
said,
and something I'll add too though is we'd like to hear, in the next couple of weeks, we want to try to get up to 500 subscribers. I mean, it's been it's unreal how many people have watched this channel and how many views that we have gotten. I mean, I mean, I can't believe it. To tell you the truth, I mean, it's astounding to see how many. But we got a lot of people who watched who haven't subscribed. If you will help us out, help us out, and subscribe to this channel, and we greatly appreciate it.
yeah, with that being said, for us here, stay locked in.